My name is Zara, I'm 44 years old, and right now my hands are trembling as I stand in the doorway of a life I never imagined, a life where my own son has cut me off, blocked my account, and walked out believing I would come crawling after him. The part that hurts isn't the money, it's knowing he waited for me to break. They threw me out of my own peace the night before his graduation years ago, so I bought a one-way ticket into survival and never looked back. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Now let me take you back to how this all began. I remember the morning it all started, or maybe I should say the morning when everything finally snapped into clarity. The sun wasn't even fully up yet, and the house smelled faintly of last night's rain. I reached for my phone out of habit, the same way I had every day for years, checking if Adil had sent a message, a missed call, anything at all. Even though he was a grown man now, living mostly on his own terms, some part of me still woke up each day hoping he needed me for something. That hope was a mother's curse, I suppose. But instead of messages, I saw a red notification, login failed. Then another. And another. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My thumb shook a little as I tried again, typing slower, then faster, then carefully, as if the problem was my own fingers and not what my heart already sensed. When it failed for the fourth time, I sat down on the edge of the bed, the blanket bunching under me. My chest tightened. I opened the banking app next, and when that too refused access, the message finally appeared. This account has been restricted by the primary holder. Primary holder. My own son. For a moment I didn't breathe. The world felt suddenly tilted, like the floor had shifted a few inches to the left and my body couldn't catch up. My fingers moved on their own, I opened WhatsApp, scrolled to Adil's chat, and that's when everything collapsed into silence. A single gray message bar, you can't send messages to this user. He had blocked me. Not muted me, not ignored my calls, not argued or snapped or said something cruel in the heat of the moment. He had blocked me. Cut me off cleanly. As if I were a stranger, or worse, a threat. I didn't cry. Not immediately. I just stared at the screen while my mind tried to assemble a version of events that made sense. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he lost his phone. Maybe someone hacked the account. Maybe. But the truth was too sharp to hide behind maybes. He did this. Adil. My son. The boy who once cried into my shoulder when he couldn't solve his math homework. The boy who slept on my chest as a newborn. The boy whose shoes I polished before school, whose lunch I packed, whose fever I stayed up nights to watch. The boy who was now a man, and that man had shut the door on me. My breathing turned shallow without me realizing. I walked to the kitchen, every step mechanical. I needed tea. I needed something warm to hold, something that didn't hurt. My hands moved out of habit, kettle, tea leaves, cup, but none of it felt real. The house felt too quiet, too still, as if it too was holding its breath. When the tea finally steamed, I set the cup down and pressed both palms against the counter. Tears didn't fall yet, instead, a numbness spread through me like frost. I kept asking myself the same question, why? Why now? Why like this? But deep down, I knew. I had seen it coming in fragments, the irritated sighs when I reminded him to save money, the coldness in his voice when I asked where he'd been staying, the way he pulled his hand away the last time I touched his arm and asked if he was okay. Love makes you blind. But motherhood makes you willingly blind. That's a truth no one warned you about. The kettle clicked off, and suddenly the sound cracked something inside me. A single tear escaped. Then another. Before long, I was gripping the counter so tightly my knuckles turned white, and my vision blurred as silent sobs shook the middle of me. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, exhausted heartbreak. When I finally sat down with the tea, my fingers still trembled. I opened the window, letting some air inside, but the breeze felt sharp, like the world outside refused to offer comfort. On the street across from my home, an old woman was sweeping her front path. She was slow, deliberate, peaceful. For a moment, I wondered if she also had children. And if they, too, had ever cut pieces out of her heart in the name of independence. My phone buzzed suddenly. For a split second, hope sparked. Maybe it was him. Maybe he unblocked me. Maybe he realized. But no. It was a notification from the bank again, confirming the restriction. That was the moment the grief stopped and something else rose inside me, something steady, something sharp, something I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. If my own son believed I would beg, then he didn't know me at all. I sat there for a long time, the tea cooling between my palms as the sky outside shifted from pale blue to the soft gold of morning. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine started, a child laughed, a door slammed, the world kept moving, unaware that mine had cracked quietly. But even in that heaviness, something inside me felt awake. I had spent so many years shrinking myself so Adil wouldn't feel pressured, so he wouldn't feel watched, so he wouldn't think of me as a burden. I stopped buying new clothes so he could afford his motorcycle installments. I cooked whatever he liked, even when the smell made me nauseous. I lied to relatives about how well he was doing so they wouldn't judge him. I didn't mention the nights he didn't come home, or the mornings when he woke up irritated as if my existence was an inconvenience. I kept giving. He kept taking. And we both pretended that was normal. But sitting in that silence, that unnatural quiet created by a block from my own child, I felt something shifting like a tide inside my chest, slow, steady, unstoppable. I wiped my face and stood up. If he wanted distance, I could give him distance. But not the kind he expected. I walked slowly through the house, looking at everything with new eyes. The living room, where his shoes were always scattered. The sofa he claimed as his spot. The cabinet drawer where he tossed his unopened bills. The kitchen shelf where his protein powders sat like little soldiers. His clothes piled up near the washing machine even though I had asked him 100 times to put them away. Every corner had his fingerprints on it. Every corner also had pieces of me, pieces I left there willingly, lovingly, foolishly. I breathed in deeply and whispered to myself, no more. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Not with revenge. Just, no more. I started with the small things. I picked up his shoes and put them in a box. Folded his scattered clothes and set them aside. Collected his old papers, empty wrappers, forgotten chargers, all those little remnants of a life where I was the background character. Every movement felt strange, like I was rearranging not the house, but the weight on my own shoulders. As I cleaned, memories surfaced like soft ripples. His first day of school, he cried so hard, gripping my dupatta, terrified I would leave him. I remember kneeling down and promising, Mama will never let go. Funny how years flip that promise upside down. Then the memory of him as a teenager, stomping out of the house after I asked him why he was lying about his grades. Then him at 19, slamming the door after I reminded him to pay his share of the bills. Then him at 23, saying, you don't understand anything, Amy. Just let me live. I did let him live. I let him live so much that I forgot that I needed to live too. By noon, I had filled 2 boxes with his things. I paused, looking at them, feeling a tug in my chest, a strange mix of guilt, grief, and freedom. The doorbell rang suddenly. My heart leaped. For a second, hope stabbed through me, maybe it was him, maybe he regretted it, maybe. But when I opened the door, it was only the postman with a bundle of letters. The electricity bill was overdue. So was the gas bill. Both of them were supposed to be paid by Adil. A laugh escaped me, not a joyful one, not bitter either. Just disbelief. I placed the bills on the table and stared at them. He blocked me, restricted my account, and yet the responsibilities he was supposed to handle still quietly slid toward me like they always did. I shook my head. Not anymore. I took my purse and stepped outside. The afternoon sun was soft, warm, but I felt a strange chill as I walked down the street. The world looked different, as if someone had wiped fog from a window I had been staring through for years. I paid the bills myself, signed the receipts, and walked back home with steps that felt heavier but calmer. When I reached my door, I saw myself reflected in the glass, my tired eyes, my slightly messy hair, the faint crease in my forehead. But something else was there too, a quiet resolve. I locked the door behind me. The house felt lighter now, as if it approved of the changes. I brewed another cup of tea and sat on the floor near the window where sunlight pooled like a warm blanket. I took a sip and let the silence settle around me. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was comforting. A strange idea popped into my mind, something I had considered before but always pushed aside. A small smile tugged at my lips as I stood up, went to the drawer, and pulled out an envelope. Inside it was a rental advertisement I had torn out months ago. A room for rent. A small but decent place. Affordable. Peaceful. I had kept it, dreaming of a life where I had space just for myself, a tiny corner of the world where no one shouted, no one demanded, no one judged, no one walked in and out as they pleased. A place where I could breathe without waiting for footsteps or arguments. But I had never gone to see it. Never dared. Until now. I traced the address with my thumb. My heart beat a little faster, fear and excitement tangled tightly together. Could I really do this? Could I really leave this house, the house where I raised him, the house I sacrificed so much for? Could I really reclaim my life? I folded the paper, slipped it into my bag, and whispered, "Yes. I can." That afternoon, I changed into clean clothes, tied my hair back, and stood in front of the mirror. I did not look strong. I did not look fearless. I looked like a woman who had been tired for too long, but ready to stop being tired. I grabbed the boxes of Adil's things, stacked them neatly near the door, and cleaned the room he once used. I wiped every surface until it gleamed. I opened the windows and let the fresh air chase out years of stagnant emotions. By evening, the house looked different, not empty, but balanced. For the first time, it looked like mine. As the sky darkened, a gentle breeze rustled the curtains, and I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the softness of my own breathing, and felt a calm settle deep inside me. Adil thought I would beg. Instead, I was preparing to rebuild. And something told me that when he eventually walked through that door, because I knew he wouldn't recognize the woman waiting on the other side. He wouldn't recognize the life I created. He wouldn't recognize the strength I found. And that was only the beginning. That night, I barely slept. Not because of fear or sadness, but because my mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment of the day, the blocked number, the restricted account, the quiet house, the boxes by the door, the rental ad tucked safely inside my purse. It felt like I had stepped out of a life I had been trapped in without ever realizing the door was unlocked. Around 3 a.m, I got up from the bed and walked into the living room. The moonlight slipped through the curtains, casting a soft silver glow across the floor. Everything looked peaceful, still, almost sacred. For once, my heart didn't race at the thought of Adil coming home late, banging the door, demanding food or explanations or attention. The silence finally belonged to me. I stood by the window and watched the empty street lit by dim orange lamps. Somewhere in that quiet, my mind drifted back to years ago, to a night I had tried so hard to forget. Adil was 16 then, angry at the world and angrier at me. I had asked him where he had been because he came home at 2 a.m., smelling of cigarettes he denied touching. Instead of answering, he yelled so loudly the neighbors heard. I remember standing there, stunned, still holding the pot of lentils I'd reheated for him. He stormed into his room and slammed the door, and minutes later, I heard him on the phone laughing and telling someone, "She's always crying." I don't care. I had cried quietly that night. But I never confronted him. I thought mothers were supposed to endure, forgive, swallow their pain so their children didn't drift away. Now, years later, I realized enduring isn't the same as loving. The clock ticked softly as I stood there, letting old pain melt into new understanding. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered, "It's okay. It's finally okay." By morning, I felt different, lighter in a way I hadn't felt in years. I made breakfast for myself only, 2 eggs, a paratha, and tea exactly how I liked it, strong, not watered down the way Adil wanted. I sat at the table alone, but the loneliness didn't sting. It tasted like freedom. After eating, I decided to visit the rental place. I took a deep breath, grabbed my bag, and stepped out into the fresh morning air. The street was busy, kids running to school, shopkeepers lifting shutters, women walking with grocery bags. I blended into the crowd, but inside, I felt like someone entirely new. Every step felt intentional, like I was walking toward something instead of away from everything. When I reached the building, I stopped at the gate. It was simple, whitewashed walls, trimmed plants near the entrance, a balcony with a hanging wind chime that danced softly in the breeze. A quiet place. A peaceful place. A place where no one would raise their voice or throw shoes in hallways or slam doors in anger. I pressed the doorbell, and a middle-aged woman with kind eyes opened the gate. "Yes, Beta?" she asked gently. "I called earlier about the room for rent," I said. Her face brightened. "Oh yes. Come inside." As I walked through the gate, everything inside me trembled, a mixture of nerves, guilt, courage, and hope. She led me up the stairs to a small portion on the first floor. When she opened the door, I felt something in me soften. The room was simple but filled with sunlight. The wooden floor had a warm tone. A small kitchenette sat in the corner. The window opened to a view of the neighborhood rooftops and trees swaying gently. It was quiet. It was clean. It was safe. "What do you think?" she asked. I didn't speak at first. I just stood there, taking in a breath that felt like my lungs had been waiting years to inhale this kind of air. "It's beautiful," I finally said. "You can move in any time. No rush." I traced my fingers along the windowsill, imagining mornings here, evenings here, nights without arguments here. A place where I would be more than a shadow in my own home. I turned to her and asked softly, "Can I reserve it?" She nodded. "Of course, Beta. Give me a small deposit when you're ready." When I walked back home, I carried a calmness inside me that felt almost unreal. It wasn't the feeling of running away. It was the feeling of stepping into my own existence for the first time in a very long time. By the time I reached my street, clouds had rolled across the sky, casting a soft shade on the neighborhood. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, and froze. Something was off. The curtain near the entrance swayed slightly, not from the wind, but as if someone had just brushed past it. The faint scent of cologne lingered, the cologne Adil always used. I walked slowly into the living room. And there he was. Standing in the middle of the room. Looking around. Staring at the boxes by the door. His face tightened with confusion, then disbelief, then something sharper. He turned when he heard my footsteps. "Ami, what is all this?" His voice wasn't soft. It wasn't caring. It was demanding, the same tone he had been using for years. But something inside me didn't bend this time. I set my bag down, met his eyes directly, and said quietly, "Exactly what it looks like." He blinked, caught off guard, as if he had walked into a version of reality he wasn't prepared for. "What are you doing?" he asked again. I didn't look away. "Changing," I said. For the first time ever, he looked scared. Not scared of me. Scared of losing control of the version of me he had always expected to find. His gaze flicked to the boxes again. "You packed my things?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you blocked me," I said simply. "And because I am not going to chase you." He swallowed hard, confusion twisting across his features. I didn't mean, I just needed space." And now, I cut in gently, "I need mine." He stared at me as if I had spoken in a language he didn't know existed. And that was the moment everything shifted. He kept staring at me like I had become a stranger overnight, and maybe I had. Or maybe, for the first time, he was finally seeing the woman who had existed beneath all the exhaustion he never noticed. He took a step closer. I didn't move. Amy, what do you mean you need space? His voice cracked slightly, something between fear and anger. From me? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't explain myself the way I used to. Yes, I said softly. From the way things have been. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His fingers twitched at his sides the way they always did when he felt cornered. For so many years, I stepped back whenever he felt pressured. I softened my tone, softened my words, softened myself so he wouldn't explode. Not today. He looked around the living room again, the clean surfaces, the orderly cushions, the quiet air that no longer vibrated with his moods. For a moment, something flickered on his face, almost like he was seeing the house for the first time, stripped of all the noise and clutter he brought with him. You packed my stuff like you're throwing me out, he muttered. I'm not throwing you out, I replied calmly. You left on your own a long time ago. He flinched at that. I saw the impact hit him like a slap, though my voice stayed steady. Backed up until his shoulder brushed the wall, and for the first time in years, he looked unsure of himself. I was just angry, he said. Everyone gets angry. Yes, I nodded. But not everyone punishes the person who loves them the most. His jaw clenched. He glanced at the boxes again, then at me. So what now? You're done with me? I shook my head. I'm done allowing myself to disappear. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, as if trying to find a footing in a world that had suddenly tilted beneath him. Amy, stop talking like this. His voice softened, but it still carried a hint of entitlement, as if he expected me to fold eventually. You know how I am. You know I get stressed. You know I don't mean half the things I say. I looked at him with a calmness I had earned through tears he never saw. Yes, I said. I know how you are. But do you know how I am? He blinked, thrown off. Do you know, I continued, what it feels like to be ignored by the child you raised? To be blocked like a stranger? To sit alone in a silent house wondering what mistake you made? Do you know how much that hurts? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. You expect me to understand everything about you, I whispered, but you never tried to understand anything about me. His shoulders dropped. Amy. I didn't think it affected you like that. That's the problem, I said. You never think. You just act. And I allowed myself to keep forgiving without asking anything in return. He lowered his gaze, staring at the floor as if it held answers he didn't want to face. I walked past him, gently, like a breeze passing by a wall. He turned slightly, watching me with confusion. I picked up the rental paper from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. His eyes widened when he saw the address. What is this? He asked quietly. A new place I'm planning to move into. He stared at the paper, then at me, and his face drained of color. You're leaving? Yes. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Why? Because, I said, I need peace. And because I deserve a life where I don't have to fear the person I love. Adil took a shaky breath, rubbing the back of his neck, a gesture he used to do as a child when he'd been caught lying. For a moment, he looked 16 again, scared, unsure, softer than he let himself appear. Amy. I'll fix everything, he whispered. I shook my head gently. It's not about fixing. It's about changing. His eyes glistened, but he looked away quickly, pretending they didn't. You don't have to go, he murmured. Yes, I do, I replied. Because staying has been breaking me slowly, and you didn't even notice. He pressed his palms against his forehead. I didn't realize you felt like this. I know, I said. That's exactly why I'm choosing myself now. A long silence followed. The kind that comes when two people finally stop pretending. He walked toward the boxes slowly, running his fingers along the tape. So this is really happening? It's already happening, I whispered. He looked at me again, really looked at me, and there was something in his expression I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Not anger. Not frustration. Not annoyance. Real fear, the fear of losing something he had taken for granted. Amy, he whispered, where did you go? When did you change like this? You never used to talk this way. I smiled sadly. I didn't change in one day, I said. I just finally stopped hiding the part of me that was tired. He took a slow, hesitant step toward me. What if, his voice trembled. What if I want to change too? For the first time, my heart softened, but only a little. I hope you do, I said gently. But I cannot wait for that anymore. His breath hitched, like he wasn't expecting that answer. I walked past him again, toward my room, my steps steady. Behind me, I heard his voice, quiet, shaky, almost a whisper at the edge of breaking. Amy, don't leave me. I paused in the hallway. The words pierced me deeper than he could ever understand. But I didn't turn around. Because this time, the story wasn't about him. It was about me finally learning to walk forward, even when the person I loved begged me to stay behind. The next morning, the village felt different. People weren't whispering in fear anymore, they were talking about the dog, calling it a hero. Even the elders, who usually stayed quiet, gathered near the old banyan tree and discussed how rare it was to see such bravery from an animal. The boy and girl walked with the dog between them, its tail wagging proudly even though it still limped a little. Every passerby bent down to pet it or give it a small treat. The dog didn't understand the praise, but it understood affection, and that was enough. Meanwhile, deep inside the jungle, the lion hid among the shadows. It wasn't angry, only startled. Animals attacked when they felt threatened, and now it stayed away from the village trails. Nature had its own balance, and now everything quietly shifted back to harmony. Later in the afternoon, the boy, girl, and their dog returned to the same road, but this time, not out of fear. They wanted to overcome it. The dog trotted ahead confidently, nose twitching at every leaf rustle, as if promising it would protect them again if needed. Sunlight passed through the trees, painting the path in golden streaks. The girl smiled and said, "Yesterday was scary, but today feels peaceful." The boy nodded. "It's because we're not alone." Their dog barked softly, as if agreeing. From that day on, the villagers respected jungle life more. They created safer pathways, set up watch posts, and carried whistles, not weapons, knowing that awareness could prevent danger better than fear. But more importantly, the bond between the children and their dog grew even stronger. The dog wasn't just a pet anymore, it was family, a guardian, and the quiet hero of their little world.